What's going on, guys? In this video, we're going to go over interpersonal conflict and how to handle it. Before we get into that, my name's Keith. I made this channel to help men create their ideal lives through self-mastery. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos because I put out new videos every single day. So let's get into this. I got requested to do a video on interpersonal conflict, so I wanted to make that now for you guys. I think a lot of you guys probably get a lot out of this video. I know I really had to learn how to handle this situation, and it's still a learning process. This is one of those things that if you're not really naturally wired to be good at conflict situations, it's something you got to work on a lot. But I have the concept of interpersonal conflict broken down into two main areas where the conflicts occur. The first one being that it's when you're letting someone know of an issue you have with them, and the second one being when you're standing up for yourself when somebody's trying to do something you don't think is acceptable. When it comes to the first one, letting someone know an issue you have with them, the best way to go about this type of conflict is to try and avoid conflict altogether while getting your point across, and that means to take an indirect approach. Jocko Willink, the Navy SEAL, talks a lot about this. He talks about how people think they're being really good leaders when they're straight up about something that needs to get fixed, but the problem is when you do this, you end up triggering the person's ego defense mechanisms. They start getting on the defensive about what they're doing. They start calling you out for things. It ends up getting into this emotional ego kind of cock measuring fight when you're trying to have this like conversation and just let someone know something you'd like them to fix. So you could take, for example, let's say you've got a friend and you like the friend, but he's late a lot or something like that, or maybe he never has money and you're always having to pay for him, something like that. Rather than call him out and be like, yo, you're late to everything and this is just unacceptable and it pisses me off and here's all these things, that's not helpful, because first of all, you're probably doing shit that's pissing him off too and you just don't know it because we're so lacking in self-awareness. And so he's going to get on the defensive about it. He's going to make a bunch of excuses. Like, we have in our mind the idea that we're going to call someone out for something and they're just going to like kiss the ring and like bow down to us and apologize for the whole thing. That's just not how it works, and you know it because you don't do that. So what you want to do is try and get the person to realize they made the mistake, or maybe not even realize they made a mistake, but realize there's something they can correct without them realizing you did it, right? Just kind of lead them to figure it out for themselves. That's why they always say that life's the best teacher, and you can read all this stuff in books, but then you got to go experience it, and people have to kind of like fail on their own before they'll figure things out a lot of times. It's just like that. We don't really accept a lot of information, especially if we didn't ask for it. We don't accept a lot of feedback unless we figure it out for ourselves. So trying to, in some sort of way, let the person know, let them figure it out for themselves, essentially through showing something off, like just kind of indicating something somehow to make them realize they need to step their game up in a certain area. Now, this is not always going to work, and when it doesn't work, it's good to start with a compliment. If you're going to have to tell them straight up that something needs to change, start with a compliment, because oftentimes there's always something, if you really look for it, there's something you can find a compliment a person on, and a person doesn't want to feel like you're strictly coming at them. So if you start by letting someone know that like, hey, like, I think you do a really good job at X. I really appreciate how you're always here for me on this, or something like that. Do you? And then maybe like we'll go with the money thing or something like that. We'll say something like, you could be like, hey, like I really appreciate that you're always such a good friend and you can listen to me when I have an issue and you always give me good advice. But it's really starting to bother me because I just don't feel like I feel like I'm always having to pay for you and things like that. Just something like that, you know what I'm saying? Start by giving a compliment. Let them know that you really appreciate certain things about them. This kind of like softens the blow, right? And that allows them to be more receptive because it sounds less like an attack and more like just something that you would really appreciate, that if they worked on it, it could really improve the relationship, and point out how them improving this specific thing could really improve your relationship with them, if it's a friend or a relationship or family, something like that, or someone in business. Just be like, hey, I really, maybe it's someone you work with. Be like, I really think if you were able to give me these reports at an earlier time, something like that. We'll just say, hey, I feel like if you were able to send me these reports at an earlier time each day, I would be able to get a lot more done, and I could then, in return, be able to get this information back to you, and we could be a lot more efficient. Things like that. Show off why it's in their best interest, because most people don't give a fuck how you feel about them. So So if you just start telling them why they need to fix themselves, they're probably not going to do it. And if they do it, they're not going to do it for long. So show off why it's in their best interest, as well as try to soften the blow with some kind of compliment. Now, the second kind of conflict, standing up for yourself when you're dealing with something. So this is oftentimes, a lot of guys get into these situations where they'll have friends in their friend group. I know I used to have this situation where you feel like you're getting walked all over and your opinion doesn't count. And you get really resentful at the other person. But the fact of the matter is it's your fault because you're allowing them to walk all over you because you haven't grown up enough. So the keys to this, the main thing is you got to integrate your aggression, all right? Most guys in our society, we get raised by women who tell us that we need to be nice guys, and we're always trying to, as a result of this, we start to associate making people happy with getting what we want, kind of. And so we start to do this thing where we're more tolerant and more tolerant and more tolerant of things that we shouldn't be tolerant of. And it also has something to do with your personality. Some people are more high on the agreeableness personality trait, which has to do with avoiding conflict and trying to find positive solutions and working more cooperatively. And the higher you are on that scale, the more uncomfortable you are with conflict, as a rule, generally. But we're all capable of aggression, and so the way to integrate your aggression, there's a few ways to do this. First of all, it's to recognize that being nice is not necessarily a good thing. Nice is a really low-level virtue at best. It's really not something you should take pride in being a nice guy, because no nice guys finish last. That's honestly a thing. I really believe that to be true. And then another way you can do this is learning to fight. Most guys are really not comfortable physical, and a lot of times when you get in this position where you feel like you're going to have to say no to something and stand up for yourself, you've got this like fear going through your mind that it's going to escalate into something really uncomfortable. So if you were grounded in the fact that if it got to that point, you could handle yourself, you'd be much less likely to be uncomfortable getting into that position. That's why they say guys who know how to fight very rarely have to use their fighting, because bullies always pick on the weak, right? So if you're capable and you show that through your body language of doing harm, people will leave you alone, because most criminals, most people who are pushing you around, they're only doing it because they think they can get away with it. If they feel like there's going to be a fight over it, they're not going to do it. So learning how to fight is also really key for that. Another really good way, learning this from Jordan Peterson, is to contemplate your resentment and the fantasies that it brings up. Because when somebody really disrespects you, just watch the crazy fantasies that will run through your mind of getting revenge or getting back at them. You'll watch some stuff that you're really not comfortable admitting to yourself happen. I mean, just violent fantasies. Guys have these things. I know for a fact, because I used to have these. Somebody would slight me and I wasn't comfortable standing up for myself and dealing with it. So for the next hour and a half, I'm vengefully plotting some insane revenge. It's not healthy, and it comes down to the fact that you didn't say what needed to be said in that moment. So now you're kind of tormenting yourself over it and plotting all these things. And these are the guys who backstab you and talk shit because they're not comfortable being conflicting in person. So contemplate that resentment, because most guys don't like to admit that they're capable of those things. But the fact that you're having these really vivid fantasies, which you will have in these circumstances, shows that you're perfectly capable of doing some stuff that you would not be happy to admit that you were capable of doing. And when you realize that, you can learn to respect yourself as a monster. You can respect yourself for being completely capable of very vicious things. And when you respect that, rather than try and reject it and repress it, it integrates into your personality more, to the point where, like with fighting, you've now integrated this thing to where it's kind of visibly obvious in the way you carry yourself that you're aware of your ability to cause mayhem, essentially. And when you have these things integrated into you, you're going to be a lot more likely to stand up for yourself. You're not going to apologize for it, and you're going to be a lot more comfortable with conflict. Another key when it comes to conflict, though, is to understand that you'll get better at this over time. If you get into a habit of saying no when someone does something you don't like, and standing up for yourself and having these conflict conversations with people, you're going to get better at it, but you're always going to have that comfort zone voice in your head that's not going to want you to do it. The same way when you're in the middle of a workout. I've worked out for years, but even still in the middle of my workout, there's that voice, the comfort zone voice, that tells me that I should just stop working out and I should go home and I should quit my workout early. And it's always there. It's the voice that just wants to relax and be comfortable. What you got to do though is you just got to ignore this voice. You got to shut it out. I mean, this happens when you go up to girls too. I've heard actually like guys who pick up a lot of girls in person talk about how even after a long time of approaching girls, they still get that rush within themselves. It kind of translates away from fear to excitement. And that's a good thing for you to do in your mind, is try and translate these situations into an exciting situation rather than a fearful situation. I have to do this with real estate. When I cold call for sale by owners, it's like, I mean, it's kind of like getting me out of my comfort zone. I'm having to ask this person for a sale. Not naturally my favorite thing to do, but I have to do it. And every single day, like I can do it and do it and do it, and I can get better at it. But every single day, every single time I'm dialing the phone, I have to deal with this voice in the back of my head that wants me to stay in my comfort zone and avoid this situation. So at some point, you can use all these things, and this is going to make things a lot better for you. And you need to understand that it is very important for you to stand up for yourself as a man. So you need to be able to do this. But at some point, you're going to have to accept that it's just going to be uncomfortable, and you should learn to be comfortable with discomfort. But guys, that's all I got for this video. If you liked it, be sure to give me a thumbs up so I can reach more guys with my message. Also, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon so you don't miss tomorrow's video, and I'll talk soon.